It was right before halftime, and one of the kids on my son's team threw a buzzer beater shot. It hit me in the head. Instantly, I just felt everything tingle, and I knew I wasn't okay. It was Saturday, December 10th, and this was our first year in this 9th through 12th grade rec basketball league. And the best way I can describe it is like street ball. It is very fast paced. It is intense. The kids love it. Like, they are out there just to have fun. The bleachers in this particular church gym facility, they're only 3 layers. So there's the front row, the middle, and the back. And I was in the center row, and I was dead center of the basketball court. And it was right before halftime, and one of the kids on my son's team threw a buzzer beater shot. And, it was like seconds left, threw this shot. Well, it hit me in the head. Now, when you think about how does that happen? I was sitting in the middle row in the center of the basketball court. I was nowhere near the basket. Like, it didn't make sense, and that's, we know that God sent that basketball because of what we ended up finding out. And it hit me square in the top of my head, not my daughter, not the person to my right, hit me. And instantly I just felt everything tingle, and I knew I wasn't okay, but I wasn't able to speak. I took a minute, took a breath, and then they were able to stand me up and almost carry me outside. And I sat down on the steps. My husband went to get the car, and my husband said, "We're going to the hospital." And I said, "No, I just want to go home." And I started to cry. I was crying. I said, "I just want to go home. I need to go to sleep. I just want to go home." And he said, "Absolutely not. If this had been one of the kids, we would already be at the hospital." I got there and we checked in, and, they had asked me why I was there, what happened. We explained. I did not meet the criteria for the CT scan that they gave me. I was not over the age of 65. I had not vomited more than twice. I hadn't fallen down more than 5 stairs. I wasn't in a high impact vehicle collision. But I knew that the left side of my face and my left arm had started to tingle, and with what had happened. So they put me in a collar and sat me in a wheelchair in the emergency room, waiting room. And they said, "Well, we'll be right out. We're going to do a CT." So the triage doctor made a decision. And again, I didn't meet the criteria, and saved my life. The doctor came in and she said, "Your CT scan shows, something, and I've consulted with Hopkins and they would like an MRI." Took me back for the MRI, but the doctor came back in and she said, "Katie, we call this an incidental finding. And you have a lesion," is what they called it. "You have a lesion on your brain on the right side. And I've consulted with Hopkins neurosurge, and they have a bed for you, and they want to transport you immediately. We've called for transport." And she just looked at me, and it's like, I get goosebumps thinking about it, but I was laying in that bed and I'm looking, my husband was sitting at my feet and the doctor standing to my left. And my husband, I looked at him and I said, are you okay? And he said, "No." That's where I spent the next 13 days. And so we got in my room about 4 a.m. And the doctor who met us there, he said, "I think you're going to be here for a couple weeks." And I just lost it. I just started to, it's right before Christmas. I have 2 young kids, and I just started crying. It's now the next day. It's Sunday the 11th. And that's the day we met my neurosurgeon, who was kind of the next part of this crazy story, and the man who also saved my life. And I'll never forget, he walked in and he introduced himself and he said, "Listen, we don't know what this is, but we know that your brain does not like it." And he said, "We need to get it out." And my husband and I just trusted him completely. We said, and my husband said to him, "If this was your wife, what would you do?" And he said, "I would take this out. We need to know what this is." We were able to determine that this had not metastasized from anywhere else. So they did a scan of the rest of my body, and those results, they come into your chart first so that you get this alert on your phone, and it's like, it's human instinct. You just look. And so I looked at the alerts, and it said, no signs of, I think it says like metastatic disease or something, and it gave a description of all the organs, and everything was good. And The doctor came in and he said, do you know what that means? And I started to cry, and I said, that means I can go home. Because at that point, there was just so much unknown. And, so then everybody started to cry. It was Tuesday, December 20th was going to be my surgery day in pen on the calendar. And so then we just waited. So my husband brought me every meal, including coffee. So he made sure that I had morning coffee, that I had fresh fruit, that I had a lunch, and that I had a dinner. And if it wasn't him with me because he needed to be here for the kids, he found someone to bring my meals. So it was my best friend, my sister, my mom. He made sure that everything was taken care of here at home, but also that I had everything I needed for those 13 days. And he stayed with me when he could overnight. And my mom and my sister stayed here with my kids. Telling the kids was interesting. So obviously they knew something happened, right? Because I had to leave all of a sudden, but no one really knew the severity of it. They walked into the room and they had lots of questions. They were older, had lots of questions, and we told them there's something in my brain. We don't know what it is. And, mom's going to have brain surgery and she's here. They're running all these tests. And so we would FaceTime every day. I saw them as often as I could, as my husband could bring them up. I think throughout the whole thing, there's kind of a theme is like, we have chosen facts and faith over fear. We were not afraid. I was never afraid. And, I think that, we tried to instill that in the kids. It's going to be okay when we believed it was going to be okay. So actually I was very fortunate that NIH was able to determine the type of tumor that I had, because Hopkins wasn't able to determine. They tested it for 200 fusions and couldn't determine which one. And no one could tell me how long this tumor was there. They have no idea how long it had been there. But I believe that it was literally sucking the life out of me. And that it was taking that from my body to fuel itself, to fuel the cancer. I remember at that point, I was so exhausted. I had really just kind of resided to the fact that I was just going to be I felt like I was going to be in the hospital forever, right? It was day 10. I was exhausted. I hadn't washed my hair in 10 days because they had put the little donuts all over my face. And, you can't wash your face or they'll come off. And those are the markers that they need for the surgery to guide the surgery. So it was just a mess. My hair looked disgusting. And then I remember then the anesthesiology team came in and they were wonderful. And they said, listen, we have consulted with allergy. We know all about your allergies. We know what meds we're going to use. We have a plan. I want you to know you're safe. And it meant so much to me that they had looked into all of these things and they were so informed about what medications they should use and not use. And they promised to keep me safe. And I felt wonderful. And so then it was time. And then that was it. I don't remember anything else. I don't remember anything else till Thursday. I remember hearing voices. And of course I had a kind of a wrap around my head. My eyes were clear. And my husband even actually has a picture I sent you. That is from that night, that Tuesday night. My eyes are open, but I have no recollection of that. I remember being able to hear voices, but not see people. And I couldn't identify the voices. And then, so I was in the critical care after the surgery. And then I very quickly did well enough to go to the step down unit. And so then I was there. And then I ended up back on the floor at Zayed for my last day, which is where we took my first walk. And I'll never forget that. So it was that Thursday. Surgery was Tuesday. Wednesday is kind of a blur. So then it was Thursday. I had been there so long. They had given me hospital scrubs to wear. So I just wore scrubs every day. So that Thursday there was talk of getting to go home. And then that Friday morning is when they did the discharge. And of course you leave with this spreadsheet, all of the medications you go home with and the timetables. I'll tell you, I knew I was going to be okay. I had from the very beginning, a piece that I was going to be okay. And, post-surgery, talking to the doctor, and he came in and he, was so pleased that we had a total resection with clean margins. And I know now that my husband had spoken with him separately and said, listen, what can we expect? Like memory or speech so where my tumor was located, it's actually right up here. You can't even see my scar anymore, but right here, there was no impact to speech or mobility. And the doctor had actually reassured my husband, like, I could have taken, 2 or 3 times the tissue that we removed and not had any impact to her memory. She's going to be okay. And so my surgeon's confidence and skill really helped us, be confident. And, that's the only, and I never wondered why me, or I never really got depressed at the potential outcome. I mean, honestly, it never even crossed my mind that it could have been cancer. It really didn't. And I can't explain it. I truly can't. That's why I call it my series of miracles, right? Because like, you can count from the worst, what some people would call the worst day of their life. It's a miracle. That's the only thing some people say, oh, you are so lucky that basketball hit you in the head. There was no luck about that basketball hitting me in the head. I firmly believe God sent that basketball to save my life. If I had not been hit in the head that day, if it had hit my daughter or the person to my right, or if it had gone into the basket where it was intended to go, I had no headaches. I had no vision changes. I had nothing that would have led anyone to think that there was a tumor in my brain. So it's a miracle. It's absolutely a miracle. So I made it back to a couple basketball games, and after one of the games, my son came over and he says, "Mom, this is the kid who saved your life." And I said, "Hi, how are you?" We had a nice little chat. The kid has no idea. People had no idea what had actually happened we decided, my one thing was I didn't want to fuss. And I think I get that from my mom. But I really didn't want to fuss. And, there are so many families have so many needs after an emergency medical situation. And it's amazing how community rallies around people. And I know that my community would have rallied around me if we had had those needs, but we were so fortunate. I just needed it to be calm because it felt so chaotic. I needed calm and peace, and I needed to get home for Christmas. That was our goal from day one. I want to be home by Christmas. Please, can I be home by Christmas? And that was our goal. And it was the goal of everyone on my care team. Home by Christmas was our goal. And we made it. And I just needed that peace to recover, to, be with my family. And so it wasn't until March 17th, which was the day of my first set of post-op scans, that I decided I was ready to share, because I thought it was important, because I'm still here and I believe I'm still here to share my story. I was always a pretty positive person. And I think it really helped me, even on the bad days, try to find the good. And because we were able to do that in a horrible situation, able to find, the miracle in the day. And I really try to do that every day. It's helped me kind of savor the moments that I do have and appreciate where, every Christmas, obviously, every birthday, my first birthday after the diagnosis, every time I see I get my scans and I see those results come in, I'm so grateful. And I think, I work, some might say I work a lot. I do have a full-time job. I returned to work 3 weeks after surgery. And I think for me, it was just having that engagement and engaging my brain again, and, feeling useful at home and at work, and being able to contribute in all the areas, right? So, even at home as I healed, just being able to contribute is important to me. And so, and like I said, I never really asked myself, why me? It's just not in my nature. And not how I choose to live, or we live, our lives. And for a long time, I wasn't sure. And now, through a recent diagnosis of my mom, I believe that if I walked the journey I walked, it was to help her through hers. And I can already see how my journey has impacted her care, and it makes sense to me. She asked why, and she's not sure why this is happening to her. And, and I said, Mom, listen, I didn't know my why until you're now going through this, 3 years later. And I said, and you might not ever know your why. Your why might not be till 40 years from now. But there is a reason, and we might not see it immediately, but there is a reason. Saturday, January 4th, we now know that she had a series of seizures at home. She lives alone. We found her on Sunday, January 5th. The day before my 2-year scans January 7th. My scans were January 8th. January 7th, I read my mom's reports from the local hospital she was at. And the neurology report indicated that her scans showed a lesion on her brain. I immediately messaged my physicians at Hopkins and I begged for help. I said, I know this is totally crazy and this is a favor I never thought I'd have to call in, but I desperately need your help. And this is what this report is saying. And we need to get mom to you. I need to get mom to Hopkins, the best care in the world. I need her there. We have to get her there. And so the very next morning from the lobby of the cancer building, as I was checking in for my scans, my sister called me and put me on speakerphone. And I let the doctors at the hospital she was at know that we wanted her transported immediately. And within 12 hours, Hopkins had reviewed her case, approved her, and had a bed for her. 12 hours later, she was in that same building. She was on the same floor that I spent 13 days on. She had brain surgery on Monday, January 13th, different surgeon. And 2 weeks later, just like me, 2 weeks later, we found out that hers was cancer. It is cancer. Unlike me, mom's cancer is not curable. So she has, it's kind of, we describe it like a blanket over the entire left side of her brain. So she has a stage 4 glioblastoma. So it's weird. You know, and I have gone through genetic testing. You know, NIH did some genetic testing it's funny. I took my mom with me to NIH because she knows the past and she filled in all the blanks, and we did genetic testing and we determined that I don't carry any cancer genes, which is amazing news. And I was so excited and reassured by that. And now fast forward to this and this diagnosis with my mom, and unrelated. I know now that I walked the path that I walked so that I could help her through her path. And from from understanding what those reports even mean, we can do hard things. And I just feel like this entire experience, right, from January of 2021, we can do hard things no matter what. And there is always a positive in the day. Even on your worst day, you can find, if you look for it, you have to look for it. And that's the key. You have to look for the positive because it's not all bad. Even in the midst of, finding out you have a brain tumor and a 13-day hospital stay, and then 2 weeks later it's cancer, and then, my mom's diagnosis on time. On your worst day, you can identify a small miracle, a small blessing that just, and hold on to that. Even if it's one thing, even if it's something so small, you have to hold on to that. And you can do hard things. And it might not feel like it in the moment, but you do what you have to do, and you can do it. And that's really what my message would be.